Facebook. What's up? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide, and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. Hope everyone is doing fantastic this evening. I hope you had a wonderful day. Big Papa has been very busy all day. Since 3:30 this morning, I have been on the grind. Hey, Peggy. Hello, Mom. I see you there, too. I have been on the grind all day long, nonstop. I did get a chance to have a 15-minute nap this afternoon, which I love to have naps. I did the parenting, I changed it. I changed my YouTube show, my weekly YouTube show, from Parenting Rescue to Inside the Parenting Matrix. Love that. Loving that concept. So I did that show and posted it on YouTube. So it is available. I also put the link in the Facebook page so you guys were able to have access to that as well. So be sure to take some time, check it out. Man, I was on a roll. A couple of those little segments, little vignettes. So last night, I'm going to get right into this because 8 o'clock tonight, I've got to do a video conference for the Inner Circle group, and the Lovevolution members are also invited. So join if you have a time, a chance, and that's also recorded. Hey, Ashley. Greetings from warm Florida. I'm so jelly. Hey, good evening. Good evening. Smith LaJoy, Smith clinician. You're coming from a different country, right? UK, is that right? I think you showed up the other night. Well, it's nice to have you back. So what the heck was I just saying? So anyway, I've got a video conference to do, and it'll be recorded. So we'll be posting that in the Lovevolution membership. Also, I'll snatch that from Christy in the Parenting Inner Circle. And so last night, one of our viewers asked me about my thoughts on trust-based relational intervention by Karyn Purvis. And I said that I would do a little research because although I'm very familiar with Karyn and knew her very well and consider her a friend and a dear colleague, and I think you all know she passed away just a few years ago. I hadn't studied her work a great deal. I just kind of knew it from a peripheral and had more just professional respect for her. She was such a kind, gentle woman. And I so admire that kind of wizened, mature persona in a person. That's not Big Papa. Big Papa's, he's crazy. Anyway, hey, okay, Florida, perfect. LaJoy, I've got a cousin named LaJoy. Her middle name's LaJoy. So I did some research, and like I said last night, I don't know a lot about it, but I know Karyn enough, and I'm familiar enough with the work to know that there's a lot of attachment theory, a lot of regulation experience to it, and so I knew that there were, there's the majority of it. I have no qualms with. I've recommended the Connected Child book, and I know parents have had some really good success. So I looked it up, and I was doing a little bit of reading. And as I said, I'm going through, I'm scrolling. I got my computer open here. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. This is good. But I knew there was something that I had read at some point or encountered from someone that I was like, hey, Brian Wood from Boston, bet it is cold up there, brother. It was like 55 here in Oklahoma today. So we were thankful. It's going to be a nice week. So we are very thankful. So I hope you guys stay warm. Of course, LaJoy doesn't have to worry about that because she's in Florida. So jelly. And Ashley too. So jelly of you two. So I knew there were a couple components that I had some challenges with just theoretically. And it's like I said last night, there's some clinicians, there's some researchers that are just on point with the brain, the decade of the brain, with understanding of regulation, understanding of attachment, understanding dyadic regulation, all the good stuff, understanding stress, fear, trauma, and Karyn cites lots of Bessel van der Kolk, lots of Bruce Perry, same mentors that I refer to oftentimes. But I was getting down to the bottom, and it's there's this concept called ideal, and so there are these 5 principles of ideal, and I think it's when a child starts to escalate. And so I just wanted to take an opportunity. I want to go through these 5 principles because this is where I feel like we hit some intersections. And what do you call it if you don't intersect? Some parallels, some verticals is up, parallels. Maybe we're not parallel, maybe we cross. I don't know what it's called, but so I'm looking on this. I found this on the Google search, trust-based relational intervention. This was posted in the ncbi.nlm.nih.gov articles that had been published, one of Karyn's articles that she had published. And so there's this one thing here called IDEAL, IDEAL. I put that in the title of the talk. And so it's an acronym, and it has 5 principles. And it says it's described as an acronym to remind caregivers of the 5 principles that should be used when challenging behaviors occur. Now you're speaking my language, you start talking about challenging behaviors. So the first is I respond immediately to the behavior, because research proves that learning is greatest when the response is in swift temporal proximity to the behavior. So respond immediately is what the I stands for to the behavior. Big Papa's got a big problem with that. And the biggest problem with that is the 2 words, respond, thank you, Gina, respond and immediately. Respond and immediately that's almost an oxymoron. Because to respond immediately, you really can't. You can react immediately, but I'm not sure you can respond immediately. And when you say respond immediately to the behavior, this kind of reminds me of the trauma-informed stuff. But what's interesting about this is that the research that's cited by Hester, Hendrickson, and Gable, 2009, I looked up to see what the title of that research article was, and it's actually dealing with children in preschool. So it's 40 years later, the value of praise, ignoring, and rules for preschoolers at risk for behavior disorders. So these are preschoolers at risk for behavior disorders, and I don't even know what that means when a child is at risk for a behavioral disorder. That's stupid as far as I'm concerned. No disrespect. It's just like, what is risk for behavior disorder? You experience trauma and you're overwhelmed by stress and you act out long enough. It's not a behavior disorder. It's a regulatory disorder. So let's get real clear about what we're looking at here. So when we start talking about responding immediately to the behavior, what's one of my primary principles? As I said, it reminds me of all the trauma-informed literature. All the trauma-informed literature wants to go first and foremost to, being trauma-informed and looking at all the kids or looking at the traumatized child. That's wrong. That's where almost all trauma-informed information misses the mark from the very beginning. They're looking in the wrong direction. If you want to be trauma informed, the very first place you have to look is inside. Mindfulness is the very first step. Awareness, focus on breathing, focus on calming your brain down, focus on turning your reactive brain to a responsive brain is the very first challenge in trauma informed, in parenting, period. In therapy, the very first thing a therapist has to do is be aware of their own internal regulatory state. If you are not aware of your own internal regulatory state and you're focused on someone else's behavior, you're focused on someone else's statements or someone else's moods, you are already out of sync and incongruent. And as Alan Shore says, not in right hemisphere to right hemisphere synchronicity. You are not connected. Right hemisphere attunement is not going to be there because you're in your left hemisphere because you're thinking and you're stressed. You're missing the point. So that's first issue number 1. You don't respond immediately to the behavior. If you respond immediately to the behavior, you're ignoring the fact that the child is stressed out. You're ignoring the fact that the child is in a state of dysregulation. You're ignoring the fact that the child may be having a trauma reaction. You're ignoring the fact that the child is outside of their window of tolerance. You don't respond immediately to the behavior. I say ignore the behavior, don't ignore the child. Big, 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 big difference. It's just a big difference. Right? See, and this has been my whole career. Like, I started off like this avid, first of all, I started off, when my career started, there were two big luminaries in the attachment therapy field. There were two. There was Foster Cline and there was Martha Welch. They were the gurus of the time. So you either believed in Foster Cline's rage reduction, consequences, love and logic stuff, or you believed in Martha's holding time. I couldn't get into the rage reduction stuff. I tried some of Foster Cline's holding therapy sessions, rage reduction sessions, couldn't get into it. Just didn't feel right. I didn't feel like a therapist needed to be the one doing the intervention with the child. It was something that needed to happen in the family between the parents and the child. So I aligned myself with the Martha Welch camp. And I was probably, in fact, I know I was the first therapist that Martha had trained who went off and did multi-family intensives on his own. And I did it for several years. I was a huge Martha Welch fan. And then I began to have some challenges. Number one challenge was I didn't feel like parents were being given any real strong, solid parenting education and information. Nothing to really take them home. And then number two, I've talked about this before, I was working with this one family and we had been doing everything. We had done the intensives with the whole family. We had I'd connected the mom and the child with elastic. What's that stretchy stuff? With that elastic stuff, I had mom, literally she was attached to her child to reform the attachment. Mom was doing holding all the time. And the kid, he wasn't a bad kid, but they weren't creating a breakthrough. And I remember calling my guru. Rebecca says, yes, this is why TBRI always seemed like such a heavy burden for the parent to me. Okay. Thanks for that, Rebecca. So I remember calling my guru, Martha, and saying, I'm holding. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And she said, keep holding. And I was like, this ain't it. And I didn't have any other framework at that point in time. And so I kind of went on this 3-year search. Really, it turned out to be 3 years. Like attachment, what is it that leads to attachment? There's got to be something that leads to attachment that I'm missing. It's not just, hey, Tammy, it's not just holding that leads to attachment, and certainly not the therapist holding the child and that other, love and logic, natural consequences stuff, which is, So I was like, what is it? What isn't? Finally, it came to me in Canada when I was working at a residential treatment center that it's regulation. If you're not regulated, you can't develop attachment. If a parent's not regulated, they can't bond because attachment is the behavior of the child to the parent. Bonding is the behavior of the parent to the child. So if you're stressed, if you're dysregulated, you can't have attachment or bonding. If there's no joy in the relationship, you can't have attachment or bonding. Ultimately, if there's no oxytocin, you can't have attachment and bonding. That's why when you stress your children out, you create more fear for your children just grow older. They don't grow better because they're not learning how to release oxytocin. Oxytocin is the key. Oxytocin is the key to helping your child's regulatory system expand. So this all becomes very, very, very important. So then I'm like, okay, back to I don't know where I was going with that. I usually do. I'll circle back around, I'm sure. So respond immediately to the behavior. I say ignore the behavior, don't ignore the child, because it's not the behavior. The behavior is only a signal for the state of dysregulation and the fact that the child has exceeded the window of tolerance. See, I really do believe, I'm going to just be flat out honest with you. I really do believe that an acronym such as this and these principles such as this are developed by really intelligent, really well-meaning professionals. Super intelligent. These people are all smarter than me, much smarter. They've got all the PhDs and MDs, and they've done all the school, so much smarter than me. And they are really well-intentioned. These are loving people. These are people who love children. They committed their lives to loving children. But here's where I believe the gap is. The gap is they haven't looked at their own pain. They haven't honored their own trauma. They've created this defense, maybe not even a defense, but this kind of fog around what their own struggles have been, what their own sensitivities have been, what their own fears have been. And I feel like that's where we end up missing the mark, because we, as the well-meaning professionals, aren't reflecting on our own selves enough to think about and consider the implications for other people. I mean, Gandhi says, be the change you want to see in the world. Mirror neurons say what you look at is what's reflected back. So everything outside of us arises from inside of us. If we are not taking honest account of what's going on within us, we cannot accurately and meaningfully see what's going on outside of us. We don't see it. And I feel like that is what is happening. That's what's happening when we don't look within ourselves. And that's where we're missing. And I'm going to tell you, all these wonderful principles, I fundamentally disagree with every single one of them. Everything else is fantastic. But if you're responding immediately to a behavior, you're not mindful and aware of your own internal state. You're not aware if that behavior is causing you trauma. Let's talk about D. D is respond directly to the child through eye contact. Oh, what? Are you serious? So number one, you've got a stressed out child. Number two, you want to make the child look at you. This is inside the parenting matrix stuff. This is it. This is inside the parenting matrix stuff advanced, because this is the stuff that uses brain science to validate what it is that's being taught. And it's missing the mark. This is the stuff that gets parents really confused and overwhelmed. Not intentionally. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to be honest about what I'm seeing here. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm not. I'm not wrong. Respond directly to the child through eye contact. You have a stressed out child. The child's stressed out. One of the most direct ways to stimulate the frontal lobe is through eye contact. The child is stressed out. They're going to start cutting off their sensory pathways. They're not going to want to make eye contact. They're not going to want to listen to you. They're not going to want to be touched. They don't want to smell you. They don't want you to be too close. And you're going to make them make eye contact, direct eye contact, where you're just going to stress them out even more. I say consistently, especially in my lectures, you're dealing with a stressed out child, don't make them make eye contact, because children don't listen with their freaking eyes. They listen with their ears. A child doesn't have to look at you. Looking at you means nothing. It's an obsession with behaviors. That's some generational parenting matrix stuff that says make the child look at you because that's a sign of respect. That's some garbage. That's like unconscious, reactive programming that we're trying to validate with science. Sensory overload, you got it right, LaJoy. And not trying to be disrespectful, but Big Papa is not the most regulated person in the world, especially when I get upset and my brainstem I got trauma down in my brainstem. I get all worked up. And I was just at Starbucks a little while ago and I had a big coffee, not a big coffee. I only do a grande pike. Do it black, but it's great for like mid-afternoon, especially right after a nap when I want to be focused and get a little caffeine boost. Boom, boom. Especially when you get up at 3:30 in the morning, you need a little caffeine boost. So anyway, and I got to do a video conference at 8 o'clock. So I'm going to be a little bit wired. And we're going to be talking about aggression. So that's always a fun topic. So you got it right. It's sensory. LaJoy nailed it. It's sensory overload. Children listen with their ears, not with their eyes. Don't make a child look at you directly. In fact, I always advise parents to look, or professionals to look where the child is looking. See, if you're looking over there and I'm looking over there and I'm talking to you and my voice is lower because I know hearing is a big sensory stimulation too, you're actually now listening to me. Every single one of you is looking right at me. And that's a lot of times what happens with the child. The child starts looking at you. You're looking away. You're looking wherever the child is looking. And then the child starts looking at you. That's what you want. That's how you accomplish that. You don't force that directly. You don't force that directly. Yeah, imagine me on Venti. Yeah, no bueno. Respond in an efficient and measured manner. So this is E, respond. See, I love the fact that all these say respond, but I think they're probably reactions. Responding is the goal. Responding is the goal. But if you're responding, you don't need to immediately respond to a behavior. You calmly, slowly, mindfully consider the behavior that is going on. Consider if this is a good opportunity to address it. The child's in a state of confused and distorted thinking. Their short-term memory is suppressed. That's what makes that research by Hester, Hendrickson, and Gable all wrong. Because those were preschoolers, I guarantee you that no preschooler is hearing anything you say and remembering a dadgum thing you say if you are immediately responding to their negative behavior. Because their negative behavior indicates that they are in a state of stress, potentially bordering on overwhelm. They're not going to hear you. That's some good classic inside the parenting matrix kind of stuff. So respond in an efficient and measured manner. This is reflected in levels of response in which caregivers use the least amount of firmness, corrective effort, and verbal directive that is required to correct the behavior. This strategy also helps children gain trust, knowing adults will not overreact to their behaviors. I like that. I like that. Respond in an efficient and measured manner. So the efficient is actually speaking to, see, this is how I like to look at it. The efficient is actually speaking to the efficient use of the parent's efficient use of energy. See, that's the way I would want to frame that. Because in a state of stress, we are not using energy efficiently. So I actually have to calm down. I have to get mindful. I have to get focused. That's how I am efficiently using energy to speak to and to address the child's behavior issue. So it says the levels of response in which caregivers use the least amount of firmness. That's right. See, if I'm being efficient, if I'm being mindful, if I'm being focused, if I'm being understanding, then I can use the least amount of firmness because I'm attuned. And I might have to use more firmness. Just depends on what the child is giving me. The corrective effort, right? So I'm probably not going to move right into necessarily, all depends on the continuum of where the child's behavior is at, but I'm probably not going to move, right into, correcting the child. And I see sometimes with teenagers, if a teenager is cursing and they use some curse word, I might look at him and I'd be like, dude, could you try using this word instead of that word? It just, when you use that word, it just makes me feel all, so please, and let's practice later. We'll practice. And you practice with them. And then, so the least amount of firmness, corrective effort, and verbal directive that is required to correct the behavior. I'm not worried about correcting the behavior. See, see, again, disagree. I'm not worried about correcting the behavior. If you fear says fix it. Fear says correct the behavior. Love says create the environment and establish the relationship to allow it to fix itself. If my focus is on helping your child and your focus is on helping your child expand their window of tolerance, get back from a regulated state to a regulated state. So to move from a dysregulated state back into a regulated state, that's where you're going to get corrective behaviors. Then you talk to the child. Then you practice with the child. Then you do the hand over hand repetition stuff. But I'm not worried about correcting your behavior because your behavior is nothing more to me than a red flag for you being stressed out, scared, and overwhelmed. I'm going to say that again. Your behavior to me is nothing more than a red flag for you being stressed out, overwhelmed, and in a fearful place. That's all it means to me. It's just a red flag. So I'm not going to worry about correcting the behavior. That's not the primary focus. That's secondary. If I help you get regulated, once I help your brain come online and you start thinking clearly, and once your short-term memory is activated, then we can start talking about corrective behavior. Otherwise, I'm not worried about corrective behavior, and that's one of the big challenges that parents inside of the parenting matrix struggle with. We have all this negative conditioning about controlling, suppressing, dominating, changing behaviors. We are obsessed with freaking behaviors. Obsessed. Just stop. Just stop obsessing about the behaviors and just use the behavior as a signal for what's underneath. Jill says, love the hat. Thanks, Jill. The dang comments are right on top of you. What? The dang comments they are right on top of me. So are they on the top of my head? Because for me, I see them. So yes, the behavior. Remember the stress model. We just did the stress model review just last week. All behavior arises from a state of stress. In between the behaviors and the stress is the presence of a primary emotion. There are only two primary emotions, love and fear. It's through the expression, processing, and understanding of the fear that we calm the stress and diminish the behavior. I'm dealing with the roots, guys. I'm dealing with the roots. The fundamental cause underneath the tip of the iceberg is where all the iceberg lives. The fundamental cause of problem behavior is affect dysregulation. It is a child being stressed out because they do not have enough capacity to produce oxytocin in the midst of stress, which keeps them within their window of tolerance. So you've got all this developmental trauma that children experience that fundamentally causes a deficiency in oxytocin response. Their oxytocin response is stuck. And until we unstick and WD-40 that oxytocin response and then teach that oxytocin response in the midst of stress, children are going to continue to struggle with their behaviors. A, the response is action-based. No. Says redirect the child to practice an appropriate behavior alternative. No. Physically lead them through a real life redo. No. Once the redo is successful because they use the appropriate alternative behaviors, praise. No. This is the stuff I was talking about last night. No. The response is action-based. No, your response shouldn't be action-based. Your response should be get your butt still. Take some deep freaking breaths. Calm down. The only action you should be taking when you're seeing an inappropriate behavior, and I'm gonna go broad for you guys. The only action you should be taking when you see an inappropriate behavior, in lieu of a child about to jump off, literally, not even that. I don't even know. I've watched two kids get in a fight and start tussling on the ground, and I'm standing there breathing. And then I go over and pull them apart. If you got a 2-year-old, I'm gonna be real honest with you. And everyone's got to go based on their own level of courage. But if you got a 2-year-old that's heading to a street and they turn around and look at you, the worst thing you can do is start running for that 2-year-old. Human nature tells us don't do that, right? Human nature tells us to run and grab that 2-year-old. But if you start running for that 2-year-old, they're going to take off running because their amygdala is going to get jacked. The best thing you can do is start to walk away. Because really, if you start running for that 2-year-old, if you take off running for that 2-year-old and that 2-year-old is seeing you come after them, you're not going to get there before they get in that street. Call their name, Brian, and turn around and slowly, calmly look at Brian and say, come over this way, honey, and start moving in the opposite direction, slowly. Use your ability to contain that individual, to pull them back. If we're talking about a teenager, don't chase them. You chase them, you trigger, you're jacking up the amygdala, and it's causing more confused and distorted thinking. They're more likely to, children are more likely, adults are more likely to get injured and get hurt by rushing into a behavior than they are if they slow down. So instead of action-based, the only action needs to be internal action. Calm down. Think. Get your thinking on track. Get your thinking on track. And then move. And then L, level. Level the response at the behavior, not at the child. Never reject the child as a person. Only respond to... Level the response at the behavior, not at the... What does that even mean? What does that even mean, level the response at the behavior, not the child? Never reject the child as a person, only respond to the behavior. What? There's no difference between the child and the behavior. There's no separation between the two. It's not you're not your behavior. We are our behavior. You can't address my behavior and not expect me to be addressed. In fact, if I'm acting out and I am stressed out and you're addressing my behavior, if you're addressing it in a harsh way, you're the threat. If you're addressing it in a gentle way, I'm probably going to calm myself down a little bit and then I'll be able to think. But you're addressing me regardless. If you don't like my behavior, as far as I'm concerned, you don't like me. If you're addressing my behavior and you're in a calm, in a firm but gentle way, then you're speaking through my behavior to me. You're not even addressing my behavior at that level. You're addressing me. I want you to ignore the behavior. Don't ignore the child. Stop being so freaking obsessed about behaviors. I think we say that. I think those are platitudes to satisfy the academic community. What does that even mean? Level the response at the behavior, not at the child. I don't even know what that means. It's just confusing. Never reject the child as a person. Only respond to the behavior. What? I love you guys. I love Karyn Purvis. I love anyone who's trying to do good work for children. You're just trying to do good work. I don't think there's anyone out there who is intentionally trying to do anything, create any harm. I believe we're all doing the best we can, and I believe that we can take some good stuff from a lot of different places. And so, what trust-based relational intervention has to say is good for the most part is good stuff. I'm just picking out 5 principles. The 5 principles add up to probably 5 pages of 200 pages. So the only thing I want you guys to do is I want you to think. I want you to be conscious. I want you to focus on love. I want you to realize that if it's causing more stress or more fear, it's not going to be effective. I want you to ignore the behavior, but I don't want you to ignore your child. I want you to realize that behaviors are manifestations of stress and fear. Read The Connected Child. Get involved, but question. Always question. Big Papa says some stupid stuff. Big Papa says some crazy stuff. I don't want you to believe in what I'm saying. I want you to look at it. I want you to base it on your experience. If I write something crazy, don't just take it at face value. I want you to experience. I want you to question everything. I got here by questioning everything. I am on fire and passionate for you guys because I question everything. I do not take anything a professional has told me at face value and believe that to be the gospel. No. I have to measure. It has to measure up within me. I mean, this is just who I am. I question everything. And it's got to make sense. It's got to make common freaking sense. And we've got to be able to talk about it. We got to be able to dissect it. We got to be able to analyze it. And if it doesn't make common freaking sense, I'm probably not going to go along with it. But I want it to make common sense. And then I want to be able to back it up with valid brain science and research. That's what I want it to be able to do. And I want it to be consistently applied across the board. I don't want any incongruencies. I don't want there to be incongruencies, because if there's incongruencies, it's going to show up inside of us. It's going to create different vibration patterns, and it's going to confuse our children. And it's ultimately going to confuse us. And as soon as we get confused, we're going to end up right back inside the parenting matrix. I want you out of the parenting matrix. I want you out of the parenting matrix. I want you to break through the parenting matrix. But you gotta want it. You gotta want it better than I want it for you. I love you guys. Big Papa loves you. God bless you. Thank you for joining me. I hope this was helpful and informational. I'll try to do that teen one as I mentioned last night. I'll try to do something on that. Give me some time to think about that. I want you guys, once you lay your heads down tonight, I want you to relax. Because when Big Papa goes to bed tonight, his head will hit the pillow and I will be out. And I will sleep soundly. And that's what I want for you. I want you to sleep like the angels you are. You are children of God. You have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to fear. We're going to leave today in today. It's going to be yesterday. We're going to leave it there. Tomorrow, tonight, when you lay down, I want you to be restored. I want you to be restored at your cellular level, at the level of generational chains that have held your family down, chains of fear, the bondage of fear. I want you to be restored, made whole in the body of God, in the body of Christ. That's what I want for you. And I want you to wake up tomorrow and I want you to be on fire and energized, re-energized and inspired and ready to get after it and be a loving force. Be a loving force in the life of your child. God bless you. Big Papa loves you, and I'll see you tomorrow.